The sun had already begun its slow descent, painting the sky with a mixture of golden streaks and fiery red clouds as the final bell rang at Riverdale High, a school known for its towering brick walls, echoing hallways, and the buzz of students eager to escape into their evening plans. Among the crowd was a quiet new girl named Emily, who had transferred just 2 weeks earlier from a small town 3 states away. She was shy, the type of girl who kept her head low, carried her books close to her chest, and tried not to attract attention. Yet somehow her silence only made her stand out more in a school where loudness was often mistaken for strength. That day, Emily walked slowly down the back alley that led to her bus stop, the sound of her footsteps crunching softly against the gravel, unaware that she was being watched. 3 boys, Tyler, Jake, and Mason, who were notorious around the school for their arrogance, troublemaking, and constant need to prove themselves, leaned casually against a rusted chain-link fence, their eyes narrowing as they saw her approach. Tyler, the self-appointed leader with slicked back hair and a cruel smirk, whispered to the others, "There she is. The quiet little mouse. But she thinks she's too good for us." Jake, lanky with restless hands, cracked his knuckles, while Mason, the largest and most silent of the trio, adjusted the leather jacket he wore as if it were a badge of honor. The boys had been planning this moment all week, not because Emily had done anything to them, but because her very presence, new, timid, and mysterious, had stirred their twisted need to dominate. As Emily passed them, clutching her worn backpack tighter, Tyler suddenly stepped forward, blocking her path with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, new girl," he said, dragging out the words. "Where you rushing off to? Don't you know it's rude not to make friends?" Emily's voice trembled as she answered softly, "I'm just going home." She tried to sidestep, but Jake moved in from her left, and Mason loomed from her right, hemming her in like wolves circling their prey. Before she could scream or run, Tyler grabbed her arm, his grip iron tight. "Not so fast. We thought maybe you'd like to hang out with us. Somewhere, quieter." Emily's eyes widened in fear as she tried to pull away, but the boys only laughed, their cruel chuckles echoing against the alley walls. They dragged her toward a waiting van, parked at the far end, its paint chipped and windows tinted dark. She struggled, kicking and thrashing, but Mason easily lifted her off the ground as if she weighed nothing, while Jake yanked open the van's side door. The inside smelled of gasoline and dust, and as they shoved her in, she cried out desperately, her voice breaking, "Please, let me go! Someone help me!" But the alley was deserted, and the only response was the slamming of the van door as the engine roared to life. Inside, Emily's heart pounded like a drumbeat of terror, her hands trembling as she pressed herself against the corner, tears blurring her vision. Tyler sat opposite her, his grin mocking her pain. "Relax, sweetheart," he sneered. "We're just gonna take a little drive. Show you what happens when you think you're too good for people like us." Jake snickered, pulling out his phone to record, while Mason drove with a cold silence, his eyes fixed on the road. Every bump in the road rattled Emily's bones, but her mind screamed louder than any noise. "Why me? Why today?" Her father's voice echoed in her memory, reminding her to be brave, to hold on no matter what, but fear clawed at her chest. Minutes stretched into hours, though in reality it was barely 15 minutes before the van veered off the main road into a forested path, the trees closing in like dark sentinels. The boys clearly had a plan, but fate had something else in store for them. As the van rounded a bend, headlights suddenly flashed across the road, not from one car, but from dozens of motorcycles parked in a perfect line, engines growling like thunder waiting to break. The van screeched to a halt, tires skidding against the gravel as the boys cursed under their breath. "What the? Who are these guys?" Mason muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The wall of bikers was an intimidating sight, leather jackets adorned with patches, tattoos glowing faintly under the moonlight, helmets shining, and the unmistakable aura of men and women who lived by their own rules. Their leader, a tall figure with broad shoulders and a scar running down his cheek, revved his engine once before cutting it off, the sound echoing like a command. Slowly, one by one, the others followed until silence fell, thick and heavy. Emily peeked through the van's window, her fear momentarily forgotten, replaced by awe and confusion. She didn't know who they were, but something in the way they stood, unshaken, united, felt like a shield between her and her captors. Tyler cursed and tried to act tough, spitting out the window. "Get out of the way, old men! This doesn't concern you." But his words rang hollow against the sea of unmoving bikers. The leader stepped forward, his boots crunching against the gravel, and in a deep, steady voice he said, "It concerns us when cowards like you lay a hand on someone who can't fight back." Emily's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing for a different reason now: hope. The bikers weren't just strangers, they were her unexpected guardians, a wall of steel and loyalty standing between her and the darkness that had almost swallowed her. Tyler's bravado faltered, his smirk twitching as he looked back at Jake and Mason. None of them had expected this, and though they whispered to one another, none dared open the van door. The leader's gaze hardened, and with a simple motion of his hand, the bikers began closing in, their engines roaring back to life, surrounding the van like a cage. Emily's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt like she might be safe. The chapter of her fear wasn't over, but a new one had begun. One where strength and justice arrived not with flashing sirens, but with the roar of motorcycles and the unbreakable bond of a brotherhood she never knew existed.